All right, let's talk about Leon Edwards' win over Kamaru Usman. Incredible fight, incredible come from behind victory by knockout with a head kick. Like most spectacular finishes in real fighting, is a result of simple things done with sublime timing and overall execution. Right? So there's a couple keys to why this worked for Edwards. What he basically did was a lead jab, rear cross, rear roundhouse kick high. That combined with him being in a southpaw stance, his opponent Kamaru Usman being in a right-handed stance and having expectations and habits about slipping to his own right away from what is usually the power side of what are usually right-handed opponents, but in this instance he's fighting southpaw, were really what led to this knockout in my opinion. So let's talk about what fighters usually do. Usually they're in a right-handed stance, right? I'm gonna go into what Edwards finished in. He switches stance a lot, which makes him extra tricky to deal with. Dealing with southpaw fighters is often difficult for right-handed fighters for a number of reasons. The two that we're talking about is that if we're right-handed, we're always basically open. Our open side is facing the power side, the left side of our opponents. The other part that's difficult is that when we're right-handed, a lot of things that we grow accustomed to doing that are correct because we're fighting right-handed fighters, they're not so correct, or at least they're more dangerous when we're fighting a southpaw. One of those things is slipping to our right side, which is typically to the left side, which is always the left side, but the weak side, the lead side of our opponent. That's usually a good habit, whether we circle to our right, away from the power of a right-handed opponent, or we slip to our right, as Usman did, which is usually away from the power side of our opponents, because usually opponents are right-handed. That doesn't work in this instance when someone like Usman's fighting someone like Edwards fighting in a left-handed stance. So the other part that was really interesting, we'll go back to that. The other part that was really interesting and worked really well for Edwards is that he played with expectations. Oftentimes, for generating a lot of power, when we shift our weight defensively, slipping, but also just with our offensive strikes, a lot of times we shift one side to throw the other. That generates a lot of power. When I throw a jab, I shift the weight to my rear side, which makes my rear attacks really heavy, whether they're a kick, a knee, an elbow, a punch, right? That's good for power to throw like that, right? It's really good. What he did is he played with the expectations of that common attack, and that allowed him to disrupt the expected rhythm and hide his rear roundhouse kick that went high behind his feints and punches. Now, I said he basically threw a right jab, left cross, left high kick. He didn't throw the jab. He feinted the jab and then threw out kind of a soft cross. It doesn't really matter. People are talking about the feint a lot. It was a good feint. Usman didn't bite so much in the feint. Whether it's a feint, kick, whether it's a jab, cross, kick, whether in this case, like it was, it's a feint jab, cross, kick, it's all kind of the same thing. You're making your opponent think about those hands, and you're finishing your combination with the rear roundhouse, as Edwards did, but you're doing it in a different timing pattern, right? Usually it's 1, 2, 3, 4, before we get to there. He went 1, 2.5, and that kick was there. Now let's go back to what we first talked about, the slipping. Usman, in his right-handed stance, didn't bite so much on the feint. He just didn't. He didn't move his head too much. He did slip or parry and slip the cross, or he tried to. So we're standing here, the jab feint from southpaw Edwards happened. He kind of stayed still, but then the left cross was coming. Usman went to parry and slip. Not a bad idea. He didn't reach very far. He didn't just slip. He didn't just parry and keep his head on center. He tried to parry and slip his head off center. The problem is, Usman usually probably does this against right-handed opponents, right-handed training partners. I'm sure you have plenty of southpaw training partners, but old habits die hard. when I'm going against another right-handed fighter and I slip to my right, I'm going away from their power side, which is over here. When you do the same as Usman did and slip to your right, and your opponent is the southpaw, as Edwards is fighting on it, now you're going right into their left side, which is their power side, whether it's a knee or a kick in this instance. So not only was Usman's expected timing thrown off a little bit by Edwards throwing a jab cross right into a high roundhouse, but he also slipped his head right into where the kick was coming from, and his parry attempt, which is not in itself a bad idea, also removed his hand away from guarding his face. So that's why we see him do this, and the kick came right on the jawline. Yes, Usman's left hand was down, the kick didn't land on that side, it was kind of inconsequential, but his right hand was down, not because he doesn't know how to fight, but because he was doing what is usually a good idea, which is parrying and moving his head off center, right? In that brief moment, his hand was out of position to protect his right side, his right jaw and temple, because he was attempting a parry of Edwards' left cross. Very simple. Basically a jab, cross, left high roundhouse, but done really well, taking advantage of disrupted expectations from an opponent and from the fact that a right-handed opponents just aren't as used to going with left-handers as we should be. And the things that work for us defensively, where we're in a right-handed stance fighting another right-handed orthodox fighter, don't work the same or as effectively, don't offer us the same protection when that opponent is left-handed. So not only is Usman fight right-handers and train with right-handers more often, half of the fight, or a large part of the fight, Edwards is giving him the orthodox look, right? Edwards doesn't also throw that many high kicks. So he had all sorts of disrupted expectations. Rhythm, where the strikes are coming from next. So he messed with the rhythm, he messed with the expectation of where the next strike is coming from. After this cross, one might expect something coming from the right side in this case, the lead side, but instead it came two left side attacks, one after the other, and it also disrupted the rhythm. And Kamaru Usman's habits of slipping out of the way of the power side for an orthodox fighter did not work against a left-handed fighter, and actually put him right in position to eat that left high kick. Amazing accomplishment from Edwards. Because Usman didn't fight poorly, he fought well. That's just the way it goes. So thanks for listening and sharing. Now let me know if you have any questions.